Cue Dave and Ryan in 3, 2, 1.
It's Dave and Ryan's movie review.
Sponsored by the Plan Z Diet.
So in this segment, we're taking some time here to kind of, with Halloween now right around the corner, it's always great that we want to find out more about movie monsters. People know the story that they've seen. Let's put it that way, right, Ryan?
Exactly.
And we thought that it would be interesting to go back because one of the most interesting characters, I think, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, one of the most famous characters, too.
Well, yeah, let's put it that way, is Count Dracula,
Yep.
okay? There is a serious backstory to Count Dracula that maybe you know about and maybe you don't know about. So we kind of looked around and found a gentleman that was willing to put up with us. I think that's the most important thing.
That's stretching the line thin there, Dave.
and come on and talk to us about the man Vlad Tepes. Like I said, we all know what Bram Stoker did with Dracula, but there was a man named Vlad Tepes that Dracula was based on. And so we have brought in Mr. Peter Moulton. He is a teacher here at one of the local high schools. Mr. Moulton, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate the time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's get a little background from you. You teach, you said, U.S. history and psychology, and what other classes there?
Advanced placement, U.S. history, psychology, sociology, government, economics, basically any kind of social studies. That's me.
And we reached out to you because we thought it would be fun, and we're calling this segment Vlad the Early Years. We got a kick out of that
Yeah.
when it was offered up to us. So, and as I said in the intro, everybody really knows the story from what Bram Stoker told us, right?
Definitely.
But there is more to the man Vlad Tepes, isn't there?
There is. So Vlad, I mean, you look at his early life and everything that goes into that and how it kind of leads him to kind of take on this persona of a violent and brutal warlord. It's a really good story. And there's a reason why. Bram Stoker may have used it. We don't know the extent to which he actually used Vlad's story. We do know that he used his name for sure. But there's a whole bunch of other stories from the area that he might have drawn from. We just, unfortunately, with history, is we don't always have a perfect record of everything that happened. But in this case, we have a record of a really interesting guy who lived a very, very interesting life, to say the least.
I have a question for you. So, like with Dracula, is Vlad also from Transylvania, or is he from somewhere else?
So he's actually born in Transylvania, but he's not. He doesn't really consider himself Transylvanian. He's from the next kind of. They call it he was a voivode, which is kind of like a warlord of Wallachia, which is the next kind of region, kingdom almost. In the Middle Ages, they didn't have a lot of these great unified kingdoms like we think of in a lot of places, especially here.
So it was more like a territory.
It was kind of like, he's like a prince. He's like maybe a governor. It was not really part of any other country, so he was independent technically, but it was more of a smaller country. I mean, it's kind of basically 2/3 of Romania today.
And when you use the term warlord, we're not maybe thinking of the way people think of the term warlord now, right? He was really, was he more of like a protector of the country?
It's a little bit of both. See, the region that he lived in was in constant threat from all of its neighbors. And you'll see him making treaties and alliances with, for example, Hungary, which is right next door, which is part of the Holy Roman Empire. He's also kind of caught between them and the Ottoman Empire right next to them. And so he, in many ways, he is kind of protector of the country, but he's also trying to keep, his power. And so he makes sure he does that through the use of his military strength.
And you and I, before we came on the air, we talked about the movie Dracula Untold, and that kind of gives a little bit of a story, and I'm wondering, is it partial fiction? Is there anything that kind of backs up a little bit of it? But it really states and makes the fact that the reasoning behind this is because the reason he became who he became, let's put it that way, is because he had a family, and the family was slaughtered, and and it was about true love, and that's kind of what Bram Stoker leans really heavily into. Is the romance side of Dracula in the novel. So is there any truth to that, or was it just one of those things that the legend grew and the legend grew and the legend grew, and the next thing you know, he's drinking blood?
It's a little bit of both. So we do know that Vlad was actually married twice. The first wife, we actually don't know for sure who she was. She was probably the illegitimate daughter of one of his allies. His name was János Hunyadi. He was the king. Oh, he was kind of like the general, almost the king of Hungary, right next door. And then he was also married to Justina Sicilagi, who was a little bit later on. So this is kind of after he's already got the persona of this brutal character. So we don't know much about his personal life. We do know he had 3 sons. One of those sons dies really early on. The other 2 live a little bit longer, but they don't necessarily have as much success as being warlords or leaders like he did. But we do know. So his story actually begins even earlier than that. So his dad was also named Vlad. Vlad Dracula was the name that he got, and it was kind of a name that they gave to him. It means Vlad the Dragon, and he was supposed to be part of this organization in Hungary that was fighting against the Ottomans, making sure that the Ottoman influence, Islam and whatnot that was spreading into that region was being contained and prevented from progressing further. And so when his dad kind of takes control of Wallachia, he's strongly supporting the Holy Roman Empire. The king at the time, his name was Sigismund. And everything looked pretty good until Sigismund died, and Vlad Dracula has to try to make some big decisions about what direction his loyalties are going to go. In the end, he actually ends up supporting the Ottoman Empire instead, and Vlad is actually taken as a young boy. Him and his younger brother are taken as young boys and held captive by the Ottomans, and so he spends most of his early life there.
Oh, sorry. Just to clarify here, the name Dracul was actually his father, or was he given that name as well?
So Dracul means the dragon.
Right.
Dracula would be the son of the dragon.
Oh, okay, perfect.
And that's actually when Bram Stoker was looking at that, he kind of was construing that name. He thought dragon, devil. If you look in the Book of Revelations, for example, they oftentimes use the dragon iconography as like a stand-in for the devil or Satan, and so he was like, oh, that means that it's Vlad, son of the devil, and so that kind of again adds a little bit more to his mystique.
Okay, and so did people, and we were talking also about the fact that if you go to Romania today, Vlad is not a villain to the people of Romania, is he?
No. In fact, his story has kind of taken on these mythic, kind of heroic qualities as he's standing up to the Ottoman Empire, especially. But he stands up, also to the Hungarians and prevents them from exerting their rule over them as well. So they see him as like a protector almost, more than anything else.
And so, you just come in and you start putting a few heads on spikes and it just ruins it for everybody. Is that kind of the way people went with this and that's kind of where the story kind of turned? Or do the people still look at him at that point as, you're protecting our region, you're protecting our territory? Or was he kind of doing that to people that were under his rule as well?
So here's a quote that actually came from him. It was in a letter that he sent some of his noblemen. He says, "When a man or a prince is strong and powerful, he can make peace as he wants to. But when he is weak, a stronger one will come and do what he wants to him." And so I think that kind of is basically his main idea here. In order to really maintain his power, in order to protect his kingdom, he's got to do stuff that people at that time would consider pretty barbaric. I mean, not just at that time, but people would look at and just recoil and say that's horrific. Why would you begin, impaling people on spikes? And you look at his brutality, but you also got to remember that brutality was a pretty common thing at this time.
Very true.
For example, one of his I think it was his brother-in-law. So he was actually sawed in half by the Ottomans while he was still alive. So brutality is not something that's unique to Vlad. He's got his own little method of doing it, which with the spikes. So. And
I just we're getting close. Got another couple of minutes here. Just the question that I have too is, so did we have the story from Bram Stoker? Is there a written history out there of him? I mean, sure, there's books and books and books on him, but is there one that kind of sticks out that we could look to and say, you know what, this one's good. It's got it right most of the time, because as you said, history is kind of subversive. People can say what they want to about certain things.
Unfortunately, there's not really a lot. I mean, you kind of have to pick and choose through all the different sources that are out there. We were talking before the show began. History is kind of written by the people that are the victors almost. In this case, Vlad really didn't live long enough to be able to write his own story and to kind of get what he wanted people to know about him. He died at the age of 45. It's a pretty young guy there. I was looking through some of my old textbooks and things from college and whatnot, and I found one book on the Ottoman Empire, and it basically had 2 paragraphs on Vlad. So there's not a lot out there as far as the really, really good sources. But if you just look and take everything with a grain of salt and just say, look, I understand he's a brutal guy. Do we need to necessarily believe he did every single thing that everybody? I think that's how you get to the truth. It's coming up with the best story with the evidence you've got. You
go with the high and the low, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle, maybe?
Definitely.
All right. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. Did you have anything you want to ask him before we get out of here?
I'm good. I just got a history lesson.
That's one of the greatest things. I find it fascinating. Anytime that you could teach me history, throw a little bit of pop culture in there, I'm good with it. I really appreciate it. So once again, we've been speaking with Peter Moulton, a teacher here at Emory High School, talking about Vlad the early years. And I really appreciate you taking out the time and stepping up and helping us out with this one. It's been great.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.